Hey, everybody, welcome to the Gapology Guys podcast, your leadership development source that helps you achieve your greatest potential. And tonight we're going to continue our foundational conversation around gapology, where we'll be sharing our thoughts around the importance gap. This is an area that can be somewhat intricate and can cause some major headaches for leaders. But this is the part that can help teams actually care about what they do each day. This will be a good one, so let's jump right in. Hey, Mark, how are you doing?
Good, Brian. How are you?
I'm good. It's beautiful here in Kansas City. Spring has definitely sprung here now that we're past Easter and everything, and everything's starting to warm up. How's it out there?
It's nice out here. Today's the first nice day in a few. We had summer days throughout the winter,
Oh yeah.
and then we just hit a string of storms. There
hmm
was so much hail the other day, I had to get out the snow shovel, which never happens.
Yeah, yeah. Here in Kansas, actually, last night we were surprised to wake up that Ottawa, Kansas. It's like maybe 45 minutes south of us. They had a big tornado that actually went through there. We didn't even know.
Wow.
Yeah, how
Wow.
close. But that's the Midwest, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm excited to jump into this tonight. So last week we started on this journey to sort of go back to the basics to share some of the fundamentals around gapology. And last week we talked about the knowledge gap. So today we're going to continue on with the importance gap, the next gap in the performance gap sequence. And love to hear your thoughts on this, Mark.
Yeah, the importance gap's a big deal, and it can often be overlooked. Sometimes leaders think that because they close the knowledge gap, if they actually got there, which is
hmm
the big one,
Yep.
that the importance gap is closed. They sort of overlook it. The knowledge gap was difficult to close, but obviously I've closed the importance gap at the same time, and that is just not the case. Um, it just doesn't work that way. We worked with a company, you'll remember this, Brian, that had 45 KPIs,
hmm
45 key performance indicators. So how in the hell do I know what's important?
Yeah. Yeah.
All 45 can't be, so therefore I've got to choose my own. So that organization trimmed the 45 to 5, and everybody knew what was important, and business exploded. What do you think?
Yeah.
It became pretty clear.
Right.
But leaders can overlook the why and the when. They assume the why is known, and they assume the when is rather obvious. And believe it or not, the why and the when, two totally different things, are the importance gap. And they have to be clear to the team when you're looking at a process that has to be completed, whatever it may be. So the importance gap is owned by the leader, and it's a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think the knowledge gap can kind of trick leaders where when they're delivering that message and they're training, they're focusing on that they sort of assume that along with it comes that importance, really understanding that, oh, because I'm teaching it to you, that it must be important. That's not the case. And I think what you said there around the why and the when part of it is a lot of times what really gets missed because they're hearing all of these different things that's sort of important, but they don't understand the order of importance and what really matters most.
Yeah. And the importance gap, different than the knowledge gap, really creates sustained execution.
hmm
If I'm clear on what's important, I'm going to go after it. And what that does is it creates an engagement level. And one of the things we found in the top performing leaders is they create an engagement at a high level with the team by closing the importance gap to where if we talked to their team, interviewed them, asked them questions, they knew what was important. And that again creates engagement. And what we found about engagement, and there's many studies that would prove this, is engagement drives performance
hmm
to a different level. So if you think about the importance gap being an engagement tool, closing the importance gap being an engagement tool, That will really drive performance. And don't don't overlook this because you as a leader own the importance gap, and you've worked very hard to close the knowledge gap, but the importance gap has got to be there. And many many remote workers have, which is common today, have tons of priorities and tasks. How do they rank? What are the most important? Which ones have to be done first? What's the order? So the importance gap is a big deal. And again, it's often overlooked. It's assumed that it's closed with the knowledge gap, to what you said earlier.
Yeah, yeah, no, 100%. And I actually I wrote down engagement. I think that's a key word that as leaders we need to really think about how engaged our teams are and how we can really drive that engagement level up. When you think about some of the biggest pain points that leaders have, retention is one of them, retaining good people and so forth. If your team doesn't know what matters and in what order they need to do things, that can really crush engagement. And engagement is one of the number one drivers of retention. So, as leaders, we really need to focus on this. We need to really consider how we are driving up the importance in our team.
Yeah, I worked for a period of time, one of the leaders of Walmart,
Hmm.
and he brought forth studies that showed the higher the engagement level of the team, the higher sales performance was. There was a direct correlation between engagement and performance. Well, let me tell you, the importance gap closes the engagement gap. It helps create engagement.
Hmm.
And it was significant. And as we learned from him, our performance improved because we drove up engagement. We
Hmm.
got to a point where we had over 80% of the team highly engaged on some of the surveys, which is hard to come by. And that changed performance rather significantly. It drove sales. So the importance gap should be linked directly to engagement.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. And when you look at the Gapology model, and I'll add these images, once we publish this, I'll put the images on screen so people can see how these gaps sort of lay out. But when you think about the knowledge gap, who owns that? We do as leaders. If our team doesn't know what to do or how to do it, we can't blame them. We own that. And like you said, the same thing goes with the importance gap. If they don't understand why something matters or when they need to do it, we can't blame them for that either. We really do own that. So looking at this and thinking about how do we create engagement, drive that up? Well, let's close the knowledge gap and let's close the importance gap.
Yeah, one of the things we found that really works here is to create a purpose within the
Mhm.
organization and within the team that can help close the importance gap. Once they understand the purpose and then they understand how their role connects to the purpose, it closes the importance gap in and of itself and creates engagement. So you can tie it all together. We wrote a book called Speed of Purpose, not trying to sell you books tonight, but we learned from Gapology that there was a speed of purpose. And when you really look at speed of purpose, meaning teams that have a purpose go at a quicker pace, they're faster. When you really look at that, it's because the importance gap is closed. And the greatest leaders tie whatever the purpose is to each and every role. Regardless of your role, here's how it ties to the purpose. And that changes everything. And again, it closes the importance gap.
Mhm.
And we've found it to be a characteristic of top performing organizations and leaders.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting when you think about organizations, they're pretty good about creating like a mission statement, something sort of that they're going after. Not all of them really create their purpose statement where they're really clear on why they're doing the things that they're doing. And the area that they really struggle in is what you said there, wrapping that purpose around each role in the company so everyone knows this is how I contribute to delivering on the purpose that we're going after.
Yeah, if everyone feels that my role matters,
Yeah, yeah.
my role delivers the purpose,
Mhm.
you are closing the importance gap right there.
Yep.
And again, the leader owns the knowledge gap and the importance gap. And again, often they've worked so hard to close the knowledge gap, they think the importance gap is closed and it's not.
Right.
They have to do that. And it is of great significance. The other factor today is there's so much remote work that in-person interaction, which is often used to close importance gaps, by the way, is missing. And I think because you attended the Zoom call that you got it.
Yeah,
Well, you were multitasking and taking phone
for
calls
sure.
and writing and
Yep.
whatever. And I'm assuming, as if you were in person with me, you've connected with it, and the importance gap is not closed with you. So we found a characteristic in the top performing leaders that they tend to ask a lot of questions. So Brian, walk me through, what the critical things are that we've talked about today and how you're going to go after it, et cetera. They also observe behavior of the team when they're with them, directly. And those things tell you if the importance gap is closed. And the top performing leaders totally connect with that and get it. And if you're underperforming at all and you're in a remote work environment, assume that the importance gap is not closed. The knowledge gap may not be closed. I can't guarantee you that at this point, but the importance gap may not be closed because the remote work environment lends itself to creating importance gaps. God, write that down, Brian.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right, I got
The
it.
remote work environment
It does.
lends itself to creating importance gaps.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Right.
So, as a leader, you have to do so much more to ensure that that gap is closed.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
we get to the action gap after that, right?
Right. Right.
So we
Yeah.
have
No,
to close the knowledge gap to the
there's always
importance
more.
gap, or we never get the stuff done.
Right. Yeah. And actually, that's a great point. So, in the times that I've taught Gapology live, like with workshops, I will tell you some of the biggest reactions that I get from participants is around the importance gap. Elements there, the root solutions that we have there, and so forth. That seems to be where people really light up. The other thing is they get sort of sometimes a little bit more defensive because this really shines a light on their leadership or the lack thereof around the root solutions and things that we provide. When we talk about the expectations, communication, prioritization, those are the root solutions. When we talk about those are leadership behaviors. I would say it seems like in those sessions that the most missed gap, the things that they don't focus on, is it all lives within that importance gap. They sort of
Yeah.
know that they need to train people and so forth. So there's a little bit of knowledge there. But when we get to the importance gap, that's a lot of times where the aha moments really come. And a lot of it ties to it's actually a root solution around under the action gap, which is accountability. Accountability relies on the effectiveness of leaders from closing the knowledge gap and the importance gap. If leaders don't make sure that people know what to do and how to do it or why and when they need to do it, accountability really has no solid ground to stand on there.
Yeah, totally. So if you back up a little bit, the knowledge gap is the what and the
The
how.
how. Yep.
What to do, how to do it. Those are absolutely critical. You've got a new process rolling out, whatever it may be. The team has to totally understand that. The importance gap then is why it matters and when it must be done. When is often missed. So when does matter. Many processes have to occur at a specific stage, in the within the processes. So that is absolutely critical. Once the knowledge and importance gaps are closed, the action gap can be closed, and that creates great performance. And we have found that the top performing leaders close the knowledge gap often trying to close the importance gap simultaneously, but added a few additional steps. And that changed everything. And again, that closed ultimately the action gap. We say that the leader owns, directly the knowledge gap and the importance gap, and the team owns the action gap. Once they know what to do and how to do it, they have to fully understand then when and why. Then it's in their court. You've handed the ball to them, they got to run with it. And when that happens, everything moves. You've got to look as well at what your KPIs are. Do your KPIs, your key performance indicators, the things that you measure and hold people accountable for, do they represent the importance gap? Are they the important metrics? If you have left the important metrics out or in some way clouded it, you have created an importance gap. The other thing that we've seen in organizations is sometimes there's a priority of the week
Yeah, yeah,
where they're running fire drills all the time.
yeah.
In those organizations, importance gaps are gigantic and they derail execution. In organizations with no importance gaps, because they're crystal clear on the purpose, it doesn't change. I know what my role is. They outperform, they out execute.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
yeah. And I think when you look at it, so you talked about the metrics, so measuring the things that matter, that are the most important. Let's measure those things. Keep it narrow. Um, in addition to that, and it's sort of what you're talking about there, is that as leaders, our behaviors create what's important. So if we say that these five things that we're going to measure, these are the most important things, we're going to track it, we're going to, publish it every week, which all that's good. But if our behaviors don't reflect that, so when we're actually meeting with our team and we never talk about those five metrics, then none of it really matters. It's when we engage with them that reinforces the things that we say matter.
yeah, yeah. The other characteristic we've seen in the top performing leaders is when they're with the team, they ask questions.
Yeah. Yep.
Why does this process matter?
Hmm.
When they listen to the team and they talk through it and they ensure that everybody within, range of hearing the conversation, whether you're on a call or in person, fully understands why this process matters. They then ask them often to repeat it back. So walk me through it. How would you explain this to your team, et cetera? And the when it must be done in many organizations is an absolute importance gap issue that has to be discussed as well. So, you can look at any business and there are factors about when something must be done in order to create closure of the importance gap in addition to the knowledge and then the action gap.
Hmm.
So we've seen the top performers totally get this, and we've seen the underperformers miss the importance gap over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's really a eye-opening thing when you actually start to work through the sequence, the Gapology sequence, and we do talk about this in the book. Um, Certainly, we recommend people read this, but when we talk about this actual gap sequence, knowledge, importance, and action, we lay it out in that order for a reason. When you're conducting a autopsy or a gap analysis on your results, where you see a result, you miss expectations, or maybe you made them, and you're trying to figure out why. Starting from left to right is really the key piece. Does my team know what to do and how to do it? And if the answer is no, well, that's your gap. But if the answer is yes, and then you move to the importance gap. So doesn't my team know why it matters and when they need to do it? And you ask yourself that question. You just sort of work sequentially through that model, through that framework. That's really your key, I think, tactic for going after this.
Yeah, so K, I, and A
Yep.
matter, and the order matters. We have had leaders who said, no, I go after the importance gap first.
Hmm.
We found that to be problematic. You've taught me it's important, yet I don't even know what you're talking about.
Hmm.
I don't know how to do it. I don't know, what to do. And then I learned that, and by that time, I've lost the importance.
Hmm.
Some great leaders close the knowledge gap and the importance gaps rather simultaneously and have made that work. But the importance gap cannot come first because the team does not have a context to understand the importance. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, 100%.
And
Yeah.
and it can be a flawed strategy. So KIA, and again, I'm waiting for the check from Kia, you know, for all the advertising we've
It's
done
in the
for them.
mail, I'm
But
sure.
KIA is the order. It works. All, correct me if I'm wrong, all of the top performing leaders and teams
Yep.
did KINA in that order and were great at it.
Hmm. Yeah. No, for sure. It does, that order does matter. And like you said, you can sort of, while you're teaching it, you can sort of blend in the importance, but the what and how has to come first so that people can really understand. All right, so what are we talking about? And I think it really is apparent anytime a leader is trying to lead lead through some sort of change. So when you're delivering a message, it's super apparent during this. If you're not very clear on what they need to know before you go to the why it matters, it can create anxiety and fear and some of those kinds of things in the team when you're talking about changing their whole world.
Yeah. And we've seen some leaders go from K to A,
Yeah, without the I. Yeah.
skip the I,
Yep.
and they can't sustain
Hmm.
performance. The I matters. So that's what we wanted to tell you today. The I matters. It's part of great performance. It
Hmm.
closes performance gaps and it allows you to close the action gap.
Yep.
So K then I, and then I guess we'll talk about the action gap next time.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anybody has questions on any of this, let us know. You can reach out to us at contact at gapology.org. That's contact at gapology.org. Reach out to us or on social media. You can reach out to us that way as well. Love to hear from you. But thanks so much, Mark. Another good one.
Thanks, Brian.
All right,
Great seeing
everybody.
you.
Yep.
Okay.
We'll talk to everybody later. All right, that'll do it from here. For more information on Gapology and the importance gap, head on over to gapology.org. Everyone have a fantastic week. We'll talk to you soon.